Check. And I don't know how to turn my camera on here. There's music that's playing, so I don't know.
I'm gonna turn that off. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. It's really, really low. Just speak up. I don't know. It's like it's coming. It's almost as though the microphone itself is not turned on. So it's weird. You're not. Do you have ear pods in?
Let me turn you up here. All right, give me another audio check.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect.
Okay, now I can't hear you because I had to take my hearing aids out. So.
Oh my goodness! I wonder if that's what was messing with it.
They have the microphones in it, and so that was So I just don't hear very well. So I might ask you to repeat things.
That is perfectly fine. Chris is giving. Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. It was not coming through, and then when she took her headset out. Okay. All right. Well, it's always fun. It is always fun to do live shows, guys. And this is it. Live on Fireside. All right. Well, I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to introduce Roxanne, and we're going to go ahead and get started because, it's a live show, but we're 3 minutes in already. So my name is Deanna. I'm the host of the Laughter After Trauma Show, and I'm a speaker and coach and educator that, I just try to bring light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. That's basically what I do here. I'm a thriver after intimate partner violence, and it really just led me to find the laughter and joy in healing. And in that process, I felt like I really learned something, and that was that we're all kind of magic, and we all have the ability to self-heal. We're not alone. We're all in this together. And so on this show, I like to invite my guests up here to share their stories so that we can all see that we share similar things and that we can connect and create community and find hope and laughter right after the trauma. So my guest today, who's been sitting here patiently and fighting with us to try to get this sound to go to work, her name is Roxanne Glaser. Am I saying your last name right?
It's Glaser, so very close, very close.
Glaser. Okay. So, and she is a self-taught artist who sparks joy with her art and her illustrations. She used to doodle throughout the day when she was young in school, and she just filled the pages, she said, with imaginative swirls and letters. And so now she uses that as a way to process through trauma, grief, and emotions. She turned to that when she had some losses. We'll get into that when we get into your story. So she had some pretty heavy losses in her life, and that grief really impacted her. And she found that using these simple tools helped her to get unstuck. And now you share that, right? And teach that to other people, whether it's online courses, retreats, in person, what have you. Okay, so without any further ado, here's what I'm going to do. I want you to give us a little bit of information about yourself, where you live, family, whatever, and then we'll get into your story a little bit. So tell me a little bit about where you're from and things like that.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm so delighted to be a guest. I listened to a lot of the other episodes, and thank you. I feel very honored to be on with you. So, I'm Roxanne Clauser, and I'm here in Waco, Texas. And I've been in Waco since before Waco became kind of a cool spot to go. So, I've been here since before it was a destination. So, now we have lots of tourists coming to visit the silos. So, I'm a Baylor graduate. So, I've been here, yeah, since the early 90s. And I grew up about an hour from here. And so I have, let's see, I have I'm the oldest of four children and grew up in a really small town. I like to tell people, Deanna, it was 285. That included, well, we'd go over 300 if you added in the livestock, you know? So I'm a small town, Central Texas girl. And so I've been here, like I said, since the mid 90s. So I have two stepchildren, four grandchildren, and yeah, so that's kind of me. I'm a yoga instructor, a doodler. Um, I do all kinds of things. So I do work full time. So yeah, always busy.
I love it. I love it, and I like how you said it. Though I've been in Waco before Waco was a place to matter before the silos. I love it. Before some HGTV and couple made it popular, right? So pre HGTV. I love it. I have a friend of mine who graduated from Baylor as well. So and it's fun. You have four grandkids. I have five grandkids. So we are in that phase. It's so much fun. I always say, the guy gives you grandkids to help you, recognize that all the trouble you went through with your kids is okay because you get the grandkids as a gift later. So, and I know that's me, teenagers, my teenage years with my kids. Woo, fun times. All right. So, what I would like to do is just kind of jump straight into your story. I'd like to hear about the things that happen. I don't want to dwell on the bad stuff, but I think people do need to have a backstory that shows us what drew you to the way that you process and heal, because I think that's, the highlight. But give us a little background of your story and how you wound up coming to that place.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I've always, or actually, let me look at this way. Now I can see now how I use things that I loved as a young child to kind of take me back to that authentic core. So in 2015, my husband passed away after a long illness. It was a really tough year, and September 14th, it was the 7th year anniversary. So that's it's always a big um, milestone. And the year he passed away, on the 14th, um, we were gosh, still so hard to talk about. My grandson Colin's birthday is September 16th. So I just remember thinking, I don't even know if I was thinking, I just remember a sensation of not wanting Ricky's passing to be on Colin's birthday.
Mm.
So it's 2 days before, but that's always something that's kind of it just kind of sits in my heart. And people who follow me on social media, sometimes you'll see me post a picture. And that year, um, Colin was, gosh, 7 years ago. So he was probably 4, and we had a superhero themed birthday party. So anytime you
Mhm.
see a picture of me in a short purple wig with a little super yaya t-shirt on, and Colin in costume, and Kelsey as Wonder Woman, that was very close to that anniversary. So that happened, and uh, it was like indescribably hard. Like I did not have words for it. And the right when it happened, you kind of have that kind of outpouring and everyone checking on you. And that year, I had just become very isolated, and it was a very, very dark time. And it's just a blur, honestly. That's the best I can
Right.
describe it. And it was so interesting, Deanna, because earlier that year, I had found, um, I was looking for maybe an art camp or something for Kelsey to go to in the summer, and I had was Googling and, where's art camps? And I came across this art camp called Lucky Star Art Camp, and it is
Mhm.
for grown-up ladies, and it's out in the hill country, and I it looked interesting. I was like, "That looks like a really interesting experience," and this was before Ricky had even passed, and I was like I was exhausted, just emotionally, everything, and I thought it might be a good rejuvenating experience. So I post on Facebook, and I'm super introverted, so this was way outside my comfort zone. I posted, I was like, "Hey, I found this camp. Who wants to go with me?" And I never do that ever. And my first cousin, Missy, yes, hope she's listening in. She messaged me and said she'd already had the vacation days requested off. It was the week of her birthday, and she was not creative, but she was interested in going. And so that's how we got started. So we sign up. And so Ricky passes away on September 14th. And then the first weekend in November, I go to Lucky Star. I was barely,
Okay. So it was the same year, but you booked it before he had passed.
yes. Is that crazy?
Okay.
It like was already on the books. And so after he passed away, my brother and a good friend bought a plane ticket, and I went and spent a week hiking in South Dakota with a friend of mine, Elaine. And then I went to Lucky Star. Um, and the way I look at it now, I didn't really interact that much with people. I just kind of I was like a numb little lump. I guess that's the best way to describe it. And, I would meet people, and this vibe, I just kind of soaked it in. And I took a yoga class, and I did some painting and some welding, and just, kind of had some experiences. And that kind of began this little seed of like, okay, my body hurt. I didn't know. I was going in circles, Deanna. Like, that like when you're in grief and your body hurts, and I drive to the store to get food, I couldn't remember what I was going for, and I'd just come home. Or I'd get into the store and I'd turn around and I'm like, why am I here? And I'd go home. So that was the first little seed of hope. And so I came home and started practicing yoga. The following spring, 2016, I took a brush lettering class and joined the Waco Calligraphy Guild, even though this is not calligraphy behind me. This is what I do. So I was a Sharpie doodle girl, but they let me in the guild, and I sat at the back and did not disturb anyone, just was quiet, and started taking classes. And so that's what I would do in the evenings, that quiet time. I would sit here at this very desk, and I would practice my letters. And so I started to feel a little bit better. I would go to yoga. I was, trying to be more active. And then the following 2016 Memorial Day weekend, I think I was sitting here, and I got a call from my sister. Deanna is my sister as well. So her name is Deanna. And our youngest sister, Brandy, had passed away, and she was 41. So that was 8 months after Ricky passed away. And it was it was I get it was horrible. So,
Right.
and
I
I
don't
just
imagine.
I kind of regressed. Like the progress I felt I had been making, I kind of went backwards. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of the beginnings of it. And that summer, because that was June, I remember thinking before Brandy passed away, uh, I just remember thinking if I could make it to June, it would be so much better because there would be sunshine and the like depression I was struggling with. I could be out in the light. Uh, and then Brandy passed away.
Yeah. So let me ask something, and I'm going to back up just a spec. So with the Lucky Star Camp, because I think this is where you met Ashley, right? Was it at that one in 2016?
Oh my, it was a blur. I could not tell you.
Right.
All I remember was I felt like women were loving me and the food was amazing. And that's like, I couldn't tell you I couldn't tell you anything. Missy was
Right.
my cabin mate, and we thought, yeah, we were like, it was very dark in the shower. We thought it needed a light in the shower. That's all I can tell you from camp.
Well, okay, fair enough, fair enough. But I know at some point in one of these, you met Ashley, because that's who connected us. So, and I just want to bring that up only because we look at trauma or grief or whatever it is that we have to process. And I mean, losing a loved one is trauma. Losing that twice within a year is trauma. My birthday is September 15th. So I'm right in the middle, right? And I lost a good friend of mine on my birthday. And you remember it. That's kind of what you remember. I remember that first. And then I remember, oh, huh, yeah. And also it's my birthday. So this is the day Justin died. And, you know, and so and it's not nearly the same as what you went through because the relationship is different. But I'm relating to this because I look at what Ashley talked about and what she experienced and in that postpartum and thinking you have it all together 10 years down the road and you realize, you know what, I don't have it together. And looking for something to just kind of get away, rebuild, refuel, find a place to pour back into yourself. And it was this retreat. And I thought, man, that's amazing. A women's retreat, an art retreat. That's so cool, right? And so she talked about that and how much it saved her. And she didn't even, I love what you did because you went out on the internet against your nature and was like, who's going with me? And I'm so glad. Like, aren't you super glad that you did that? Because what would it have looked like after what you went through had you not had somebody in your corner going, let's do this. We're still going. Because I have to think that she probably played a part in making sure you still
Let me
went.
tell you what, Deanna, I have one of my philosophies is that I think, we do have that, we can have that internal courage and bravery, but man, if you have one buddy with you, you can do anything. Just that one. So that's what I try to do now. If someone, needs something or to be a cheerleader for them or to encourage them, because I mean, Missy was everything. I think she's driven us too. So I do remember she had a little chicken sticker on the back of her car. And so, yeah, because she had little chickens at that time. But that's now it's all coming back. So maybe I did meet Ashley that first year.
So you guys were in a similar place though, like she might say the same thing. Like I don't remember which year, but I go every year now. She goes every single year. And it is I love the community that creates, the camaraderie that it creates, and you get to walk into a place and go, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. I'm not losing my mind. this is something that I have to process, and here's a place where I can do it.
It's so beautiful. It reminded me of that Anne Lamott quote where she says, "It's such a wonderful thing that we're not all," basically, I think she says that we're not all crazy on the same day, so that we all are in different places, different seasons of life. I do remember some of the ladies that I met, some of the mothers of camp who did. They would just kind of like, they're like, you know, just give me hugs. And they would just be like, I know, and because that's one of the things I've discovered with grief is that when you have experience, and there's grief is just coming from loss, but the specific bereavement style of grief, once you've kind of walked that a bit, you know it in a different way. And that's we do know there are ladies that I met at camp, and we kind of love on each other. But then if they have a loss or you have another loss in between, then you come the next year and you're like, I really didn't know until I know.
Right, right. No, I can only imagine. And I do think that people also, the way they lose someone has such a huge impact, and having people relate to how that happened. If you lost someone suddenly, I have a friend who lost her mom, her stepdad, who was really the dad who raised her, and her grandfather, all within 3 months in 2015. I think it was 15. And yeah, she spent 3 or 4 years trying to sort through that. Her grandfather was older. So, yeah, okay. Her mom, she had breast cancer and she died within months,
Mhm.
you know, from the time she found out till the time she was gone. There was no, so I do think that when you have the different ways of processing things too, having people be able to relate on that level as well. So the other thing that I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about before we kind of get into the doodling and the healing side is having two losses this close to you back to back. And I mean, really, it's back to back, right? You're barely treading water at 8 months. Come on, let's just be real. And you had kids too, right? So,
They were not at home. Yeah, they're older, so they were not at home. So I was alone.
okay. So again, another aspect of that is, heavy. But also they still lost a parent, and you do have to kind of process part of that together as a family, and then you lose another family member. So just tell me kind of what that looked like afterwards, because like you said, you felt like you were getting a little ahead and you were like, I just get me to June and sunshine, and then you lost your sister. So kind of talk to me a little bit about that and how that really maybe helped you to dive into a little bit more of your creativity.
Yeah, so when you do have the multiple losses, um, it and I guess one of the things I know now is that I would never generalize for anyone, because grief that comes through bereavement, grief that you experience, it is so unique for each person. Um, and so that summer, I can remember it was summer, we focus on softball and, going to Hawaiian Falls. So it really was being with the kids and cheering Kelsey on, and just do the next thing. And then by the end, I guess it was the end of softball season perhaps that year, um, I just still was not doing well. And the way I describe it is I couldn't get up off the floor. I would just lay on the floor and look at the ceiling fan and just watch it go around and
Mhm.
around. And so I sent an email to, I was trying to find someone that would have that had experienced a significant loss and how they worked through it. And so my
Mhm.
boss's wife her best friend had passed away. And so I reached out to her and I was like, I'm not doing well. I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
I didn't know, I didn't know what I needed resources, because like as I would, share with friends and stuff. If you're not going through it, then, as time moves, if it's like even kind of under a year, after a few months, people are kind of like, "You're still sad? What's going on?" And not in a mean way, but it's just
No,
really
it's never meant in a mean way. But I think, and this is something I'm really conscious of. But I think as we get to a certain age, you don't escape going through this on some level, and you start to understand it a little bit better. But you know, when I have friends who go through losses, one of the things that I like to do is wait 2 to 3 weeks after all the services, because I can remember when we lost my uncle, and it was kind of unexpected. Like, he went in, there were some things, there were some complications, but then he was doing great. And then all of a sudden, he was gone. And he actually teased a nurse about something she put in his IV, and he was like, "All right, you're not going to kill me, are you?" And he thought he was joking, but he thought it was a medicine that he wasn't supposed to be getting right now, but he didn't know all the meds. And to this day, we think that possibly he got medicine twice
oh my god.
at a shift change,
Oh,
because it was before everything was computerized, so the charting was manual.
oh my.
Um, Now we could be wrong. I don't know. We don't know for sure, but we're very suspicious of it. But the point is that I can remember what my aunt was going through, but we had so much to do to take care of things. But 3 weeks, 4 weeks after it, there's no one around. Your kids are grown. There's nothing, and it but quiet, and all you can do is think about this stuff. And so, remember, from that point forward, it was always 3 weeks to 4 weeks. I cook a meal. I send, a gift. It's something that says, "Hey, we didn't forget. I didn't forget about what's going on for you." You know, it's life is weird. So, so tell me, so you reached out for resources because here you were in this kind of place.
I did, and it is, and Misty was so kind. She had worked through a grief group called Grief Share, and they partner with a lot of churches. It's a faith-based 12 or 14-week program, and Misty's a librarian by training. And so she researched and found a local group, and there was actually one around the corner from my home. And she sent me an email. She was like, "Here's where it is. This is the leader's name. I've already contacted her. You just show up. It starts next week." And so she directed me, basically was like, "Get in your car, go."
I love
And
it.
that was it was so nice to be in a space with people who knew bereavement, and the curriculum really addresses so many elements around bereavement, everything from complicated grief, everything from, your body's going to hurt, how to take care of yourself, when you're, mad at God and everybody, how to work through that. And in that process, I met one of my dear friends. She and I sat on the corner, and when the chocolates would come around, we'd grab a handful of chocolate. We would cry. Pretty much that's what we did the first entire session. Becky would give us homework. We would take our books home with us. We would bring them back without doing our homework and eat more chocolate. So it was just the beginning stage was to show up and just to feel that beginnings of community around, and to start to hear stories. And that was it was fantastic. And then at the end of 12 weeks or 14 weeks, Gail and I would look at each other and we'd say, "One more time." And so we did it a second time. At the end of that time, we do a little homework that time, and then we did it another time. So we did it 3 times. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
just to let people know, so that would have put it like 2 years after Ricky's passing that I would continue to go to grief share and still wasn't talking much about it at all. Would still cry. Um, yeah, so it was really intense, but grief share. And now Gail and I go back. One of our joys is each they do it like in the fall and the spring. So each
Uh-huh.
time they have a new group, we call ourselves the Grief Share Fairies. And so we take a meal, and I've got either coloring books or journals to take and to share with the group, and just to kind of tell our story to kind of, give hope because, when it's raw and it hurts so much, you're like, I'm going to feel this forever.
Right, right. And there's so many different forms of grief, and it's not always when you lose someone. I remember going through divorce and feeling like that. I understand that um, the person was still in the world physically, but it was like, I don't know, it was really bizarre because I've had loss, and this was so different because it was like, yeah, except that I'm reminded constantly that he's there. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to get past all of this. And I did. But
Tough.
when you're in it,
Mm,
when you're in it, you're
yeah,
in it. And having that support. So I think that's amazing.
yeah, I had a friend that was going through a really tough divorce the same time I was like in the depths of grief. And so we would have those conversations about the differences in grief. Because would
Hmm.
ask, he's like, now, is that grief share? Is that on, they have to have passed away that I can't like, I was like, yeah, that one is specifically. So he was going to divorce care and I was in grief care. And so we were like, oh, what are y'all doing this week? So yeah, there was,
Right. And it's interesting that some of the stuff crosses
mhm.
over, but it's not the same. You definitely need different
Yeah,
care for sure.
definitely too. I was like, yeah, because that's a whole different, yeah.
Yeah. And being able to process when you've lost someone that you love or two someones that you love, especially when you have a belief system and you're trying to find comfort in a belief system that might not actually feel very comforting at the moment.
Yeah.
So your spirituality comes into question or to call or to task. There's just a whole lot that's wrapped up in it, and it's just
It's a whole
extensive.
bunch to I think of it now as like an untangling. There's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of things, and then as you start kind of unwrapping and being curious about it, then, you'll find little filaments that are connected to other things that you didn't think were connected, and so
Mm.
that's been there's been a lot of unraveling in the
I
so
love it. Untangling,
untangling.
detangle. Yes, I love that.
You
Okay.
to where you're like, you have those, we talked about the little headset with those little you need it, but you're like, okay, it's gonna and you have to be patient because if you try to untangle it very quickly, it takes
It
some
gets knotted worse.
yeah.
Trust me, I get it. This is a prime example of that. You would think that this would not get that tangled, but believe me, the second you move it. So let's talk then. How did this eventually turn to the doodling? Because you did spend some time at that desk and you did go take your lettering, and then you lost your sister after that. So, but apparently you did come back to it. So tell us the journey into doodling and how that maybe changed things, saved you. Did it save
Oh
you?
my gosh, yeah. It's so
Okay.
interesting to see because I didn't know what was happening at the time. But before Brandy passed away, that winter, I started helping Lisa with the website for camp. And I was like, oh, I've never, she asked if anyone could. And I was like, oh, I can do that. So Deanna, it was so funny. I got the list of classes and I'm putting them on the website. And there was one called Doodle Journal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea like that was a thing, like doodle and journaling put together. And I read the description. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do that. That is my class. And I just in my heart was like, "Oh, interesting." And so that year, I wanna say I was doing one of those vision board kinda things. It's like, "Oh, it'd be cool to teach at Lucky Star at some point." Well, that fast forward, so that was in the winter, so Brandy passes away in May. August 25th was Ricky's birthday. So this is not quite the 1 year anniversary since he passed away, but his birthday. And I was out in West Texas on a for my day job, and had to be out there doing training. I was out there for like 2 weeks. So on his birthday, I was sitting in a hotel room, San Angelo, maybe someplace out in West Texas, crying. I was just sad, crying,
Right.
like, oh my gosh, like, is this ever going to get better? And I got an email that evening from Lisa, who said the original instructor for that class could not come to camp, and it asked if I wanted to teach it. And
Oh,
so
just push you right into it, baby.
and I was like, "Of course I would." And so that's how I became a teacher at Lucky Star. Completely just like look back, if you scroll all the way back on my Instagram, you can see the early you're like, "Oh my, I don't know why I was like sharing it with everybody, and it is it's definitely beginning work. And so that's kind of how I got into teaching at Lucky Star. I continued taking lettering classes. Another lady I met at camp, Rena, owns a retreat center about 20 minutes from my house. She invited me to teach some classes down there. And so I just kept doing like one thing, like do the next thing. That's what we say in grief, do the next thing. You don't have to do all the things, you just have to do the next thing. And so I have been a teacher at Lucky Star ever since 2016. And then there's more to that story I discovered last year. This is how amazing like things will fall together. Last year I was sitting in a class learning some Zen embroidery with Kathy Ann, and she overheard me telling that story. Well, there was more to the story I didn't know. In 2016, Kathy Ann, who has been to every year of Lucky Star except for 2016 because she was already committed to another project, was the first person Lisa asked to teach Doodle Journal.
Oh, funny.
And so she could not. So I was the second substitute for Doodle Journal. And so I did not know that. So, because, and Kathy Ann was just like, no, I'm booked, can't do that. Well, she didn't know that she was that little part of my story of how I became a teacher at Lucky Star. And
That
so
is
yeah, I've done one little thing after the other, and now I love teaching at retreats. I just got back from teaching at a Soul on Fire retreat in Missoula, Montana, with
oh, fun.
yeah, with her Hazel Eyes Studio, Desiree, and I love teaching at retreats is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, I said I told you that we have a retreat coming up that we're planning on January 6th. That we don't have space for this because we it's not long enough. It's not long enough, and it's not an art retreat. We were trying to figure out if we could put something in there for it, but we're gonna have to make it longer to be able to do something like that. But we have another artist, and she might still be in the audience. I have the screen big so I can see, but she does this kind of work too. So I'm hoping she'll jump up here and you guys can chat a little bit. But I can see the value of it. It excites me. So I'm gonna just put I'm gonna just show people something real quick. So I decided that, like after I read some of your stuff and we talked, I thought I was started. It started making me think because your bio was talking about how you did this in elementary school, and I was like, oh, God, I mean, from elementary school all my life, like I have papers from this is a conference that I went to in June, and all the stuff is like in the margins. I like to put squares around things, underline things, doodle. I doodle on everything, and nothing's written straight. I write in bubbles and circles and emphasize things with lines. I don't know. Anyway, so I started thinking about it. I'm like, I think that I do this pretty naturally too. I think that without having been diagnosed, I'm probably a little ADHD. Or maybe I don't have the H. I'm not sure I'm hyperactive, but whatever that's called. Um, but I realize that that's something that kind of just helps me to focus a little bit too. So, like if I'm on a Zoom and I'm trying to pay attention, I doodle, I'll doodle words, I listen, I'm taking notes, I might write my points, but it all is in some form of doodle. Anyway, so I got this
Yes.
from you, and the reason why is in my journey, and my divorce was over 7 years, okay, of processing and trying to get to a finalization. Okay. In a place where you think nothing's ever gonna be the same, and there was domestic abuse, and then out of that, anyway, not my story, but a mess. It's been a long way coming, but in that, and when I started my healing journey, one of the things I couldn't really get to is gratitude, because I was trying to find gratitude in everything. And when you deal with these types of situations, it's hard to say, "Oh, I'm grateful for that." And it's not because you're happy it happened. It's being able to find the gratitude in the situation, meaning how do I grow? How do I learn? What do I get from this? And so with that, I worked an entire year on that. And I realized working that whole year that forgiveness was one of the biggest issues. But this is something that I do on a daily basis, right? I do a gratitude, I text gratitudes with my kids. I do this every day. So I said, let's put doodling with it for 31 days or 30 days, whatever this is. And so that's what I've been doing. And you can see some of
Yes.
my stuff in
Oh
here.
my God.
It's
Yes. Yes.
okay. So, I mean, I'm just thumbing through it because I'm not a professional doodler, but you know, I thought, oh, this is fun. So, guys, if there is something that you need to connect, like let's just say, I feel like if you're having a hard time with gratitude, or if you're having a hard time getting your thoughts out of here, maybe one of your journals will, or coloring pages or whatever, will help with that. And I didn't do this yet, but I will put into the fortune cookie your freebie, because you have a little something you gave me to give away. Tell us what that is, and I'll go find the link real quick.
I did. You have the tool guide, I think is what you have
Yeah,
there.
I think so. I think so. I think that's what it
Yeah,
is.
so you have that. And that is because I get asked all the time now, what am I using to create? And so the other thing that I'm kind of known for is things that are simple, to not be fussy, because one of the things that I struggled with in my grief journey was choice. I couldn't handle a whole bunch of choice. And so now I use just really simple tools. And people ask, what is that all the time? So I was going to tag on because,
Hmm.
in addition to that, because you have the grounded in gratitude, I also have the grief to growth journal. And that one is
Oh, okay,
not
cool.
specific for bereavement, but that one is 90 days. And so, kind of the first 30 is like, you're going to be okay. It's for that laying on the floor, looking at the ceiling fan phase. Then the second
Hmm.
month is kind of like, okay, you're up, you can do a little bit. And so that one has like little inspirational sayings on it. And so then the last 30 days is kind of like shine your light kind of thing. So it's that
Hmm.
a little bit of a progression there. So the one thing I did for my healing journey was the other one was the coloring book. And it's not like the most beautiful ever coloring book, but it
Hmm.
served my needs. So this little
Uh-huh.
guy, it's the Embrace Your Journey. And the
Okay.
reason I wanted to share that is so the first page in is
Hmm.
it's dedicated to Brandy.
Okay.
And it's full of sayings that helped me get through that year. And the reason I dedicated it to her because that April, the last birthday present I ever gave her was a coloring book and Prismacolor colored pencils. And it's the first time she had ever colored.
Oh.
And she said it calmed her so much and she loved it. And she was always texting me pictures of things she had colored. And so when we had our celebration of life, we took pages out of the coloring books that she had colored and placed them on display. So that was part of, and creating that coloring book was part of when I started to realize like there's a way to use creativity to um, kind of calm your mind, because that was the other thing as I started practicing yoga and meditation, different ways to use techniques to color your mind. Color your mind. Look at that. That is not even close. Calm your mind. So
Or color it. I
yeah,
mean,
so that's
coloring your mind might be calming, you know? I
that.
love it.
So yeah, so I do different things. Like this is a style that I teach in the mindful doodles. So this is an
Uh-huh.
entire little healing journal that I have, and I've just filled it with all of these. This is what I taught at the retreat when I went.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Okay.
Also known by, sometimes I'll put the Lord's Prayer into it. My latest one is the Drawn to Gratitude, where I'm combining the drawing with the gratitude. So that one's,
I
uh,
love it.
yeah. So it's that kind of thing. So the more I've started working with people, it is to kind of reconnect you with the narrative, with, underneath that narrative you've developed.
Yeah. And so for me, when I talk about in my coaching, one of the things I talk about, okay, I have 5 keys, and the third key is, conscious language. And that is just becoming aware of your reels, right, that are playing in your head. And when you become aware of those, you can pull that forward and say, okay, that's not true and it's not serving me. And to be able to flip that script
Oh,
into, like I say, turn on, you gotta record over the mixtape. And so,
mm,
I look at it like, I mean, I guess because I'm my age, cassette tapes that we recorded from the radio, and you just, have to record over it. So I love the narrative, getting under that narrative.
that is, yes, because I work with most of the ladies that I work with will come to me and they're newbies. They're like, and most people come that I work with either new to kind of visual creativity, or they're coming because I speak to a lot of grief groups. So they're coming for some healing tools. And they'll say they're not creative. And so that's one of the first things that we start to address of the stories that we tell ourselves may or may not be true. And most
Right.
of them they're not, because they've just developed. And so one of the techniques we use is I'm like, okay, I want you to listen to how you talk to yourself. And when you hear something kind of negative towards yourself, I want you to pause it and then think that, well, if you accept that to be true based on sometimes nothing, no evidence, then you have to accept that maybe the opposite is true. And so
Hmm.
we'll do kind of a little thought experiment there to help us
Right. Flip the
kind of
script,
ground.
reframe, whatever you want to call it. And that's why I say, like, in the healing process, I think that's a key, you know And so for me, my 5 keys: forgiveness, gratitude, and then, positive conscious language. Flipping that script and making sure that you're doing that, taking care of yourself and loving yourself, which are two different things. But if you do all of those things, you start to feel at home within yourself again. And I think that's where we feel. We feel like we don't know who we are. We don't know how we move
Mm.
forward. We don't know how to pick yourself up off of the floor,
The
you know?
question, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Like, did you find that there was a certain part, like I call it in the really tough times, the hard times. Like, did you find yourself either like having a very difficult time, like making a decision, or even knowing what you liked, like to make a
Yeah.
choice?
Right. And so for me, I know this is different, as far as the way it had to be processed too. Not only was it a different situation, but I came from abuse. And so when you're coming out of an abusive situation, yeah, you can't make decisions. You don't know who you are. You have been walking on eggshells and conceding to keep the peace for so long that yeah, you don't know if you like your eggs scrambled. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know. You know what I'm saying? And so and I'm not saying it was that bad. I'm not saying I didn't have any identity, but it was so wrapped up in everything else. And then you felt like, but I was trying to make this work, but I love this person. There were always these redeeming qualities. There's all this stuff. It's a lot. So, yes, decision making was difficult. What I did find that wasn't difficult is routine.
Mm.
going to work, getting up in the morning, going to work, doing the things that because you could do them by rote and you didn't have to think about it.
Oh, that was,
So,
yeah, too, with that. So that was, I would take Kelsey to school. So that would get me up. That was my little routine. So I'd go over and take
mm,
her to school. And then, kind of that concept, one of the ways that I teach that now, I have an online course that I started this year to, like, give me something to do in those dark times. So it launched in January and I worked on it, and it's called Journal Jumpstart. And so
uh-huh,
with that, it's helping you learn, like, first of all, how you approach the creative page. And so it's like I give you choice, but I also give you a lot of support with that. But part of it is learning what you like. Like, there are
yeah,
certain marks that you will like to make. Like when you doodle, I heard you mention you like circle words, or do you have certain like patterns you will repeat? Those are like your patterns you go to?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I never noticed that before, but I'm going to look through this to see if there's things that I do. I'll do like dots and dashes a lot.
Mhm.
I underline, like
Mhm.
double underline things pretty often. I don't know.
They're
Yeah.
like
I have to,
comfort doodles, yeah. Sometimes I'll, like,
yeah.
do something that feels a little, awkward, as I'm trying that, but then I'll always come back and I'll grab, like, my Sparkle Pop pens, and I'm gonna have some little spirals going, and, those things that I really just look at, and it just fills my heart with joy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I had an interview with someone on here too who went through a really, like a really, really bad breakup. She wasn't married yet, but she thought that's where it was going. And I do flowers a lot too. It's interesting. Okay.
But
Um,
you won't
yeah,
unsee it. You'll
you're
see.
right. I won't unsee it now. But she calls her work heart work, HEART, capitalized, because it's art. And she's self-taught too. She does huge murals and stuff now. But but yeah, I just think that people need to recognize that we all have some creativity in us. We are made kind of that way, and it doesn't matter what it is. I don't care if it's coloring, doodling, drawing, painting, crocheting, singing, dancing, skating, hula hooping. I don't care. It doesn't matter what the outlet is.
Mhm.
Um, it is really something I think that if you look back like you did with your childhood and recognize that that was something you always did, then innately your brain, your psyche, everything understands it when you come back to it. And it's a place of comfort. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I think people need to recognize when they're walking through their healing journey. Whether you're tapping into something new, like you've never doodled before, right? Or you've never watercolor painted or whatever, or you are looking back in your childhood and finding something that you actually like to do, just tapping into something that's creative. I think it is comforting and it's fulfilling. And I think that you start to recognize that it frees your mind.
Oh, 100%. I've heard so many stories of how people that have never been able to meditate, when they'll go through some of my courses, learn some techniques, they're like, "I cannot believe how calm I felt." We do a lot of breath work in combination with that. And then the other thing that I noticed from my, Journal Jumpstart graduates, some of them continue. They are still doing I personally have a daily creative practice. So if you look on my Instagram, I'm like at day 176 or so. I started the 100-day challenge, kept going. I hear some of
Mhm,
my students, they kept going. I hear
mhm,
others that this taps into what you were saying, Deanna, that they're like, tried it, but the doodle outlet is not for me. But they took the language work we did, which sounds like your third key, and they were like, but you know what I love to do? It reignited me. I wanted to get back into cooking or dance or other things. And to me, that's huge, because when you're
right.
stuck, you're stuck. And so whatever we can do to get you going again, to where you're like the laughter after part of,
Mhm,
like, and I can remember the first time that I felt those. It's almost like little bubbles you feel, like those,
mhm,
and you're
mhm,
like, what is that? That feels very different. So now
right.
to have that, I
And do
just,
do you remember the first time that you actually just had a belly laugh or your face hurt and you're like, man, I don't even remember the last time. You almost feel like, should I feel like this? Is this okay? It's
Yes,
so I
100.
remember this too. And I told this story one time. As a matter of fact, a friend of mine who passed away recently that I met here, she, um, she brought this story out of me, right? She made me tell this story and find this story. And I hadn't realized it, um, that there was this incident that brought that out where we laughed so hard it was like we laughed when we were kids. You laugh so hard till you can't. Your face is hurting, your stomach is hurting, your sides are hurting. I was actually the brunt of the laugh. It was at me as much as with me. I would like to say they were all with me, but I was yes, I had done a few things that it was funny. And but it was so me. It was just so 100%. I felt like me again. And when we just enjoyed the moment, in the moment, and laughing. And I remember coming away from that going, God, I can't even remember the last time. I'm not saying I never laughed over the years. It wasn't like that. It just wasn't that pure. It was always something hanging over it. And then it was not. And I was just like, what is happening? But
I
it
have several
take it.
groups now that, I can remember the first one that was like that was I have a group of friends that we play mahjong together. They taught
Uh-huh.
took me in about that time and, let me join, and yeah, some very funny mahjong ladies, so
So
my
there you go.
grandson and then little
Don't take
Colin.
yourselves
Yeah,
right.
little
You have to
Colin.
process, allow those feelings to come up and come out, get them on the paper however you have to, or whatever way you need to let them out. I taught myself to crochet also, in that period of time. My grandmother used to crochet, and I knew how to do a chain. Like when I read it and was teaching myself, I was like, oh, I kind of remember this. But that was the only thing she had ever taught me. So I went through it and I started learning it, and I've made, a few things. And again, it was one of those things that it frees your mind, because what it does is it stills your mind. Your mind is going a mile a minute and you can't get yourself to stop the loops of the thinking. And once you find yourself in a creative outlet, it really breaks that loop. And when you break that loop, that's the unstuck I think you're talking about. When you break that loop, it allows you to just calm down and maybe process some of that.
Is the mindful doodles technique that I teach. It's a little sliver of what we do in Journal Jumpstart, and it's kind of this combination of some neurographic work, some like Zen tangling, and it's going through when you go through the entire process. I loved, and I was as I was learning it, it's the concept of quieting the prefrontal cortex, so all your thoughts, so it's quieting that
Hmm.
part so that your subconscious can
Right.
actively work.
Hmm.
And it is such a beautiful process, and I've heard from ladies that will start one lady we were like I was like, "You're still supposed to sleep too," but she was like, "Oh, I started at 7:30 one night, and I looked up and it was like 3:30 in the morning," and she was still
Right.
working in her journal. It had pulled her in, it had pulled her to I was like, "Are you" she was like, "No, it was wonderful," and she said she was just able to kind of process things that she had not, and
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
stories, Deanna, just keep me going. And I will tell you
Yeah.
the thing that did make me laugh, I can remember so much. Little Colin, little sweet little grandson, he has this innate sense of how to make people laugh. And so he's now 11, but he can make me laugh and do his like he had all these little like faces he would make and just I was like, you are such a little delight. But yeah, so
Right.
it was
Right.
a little
Blessings.
nugget there. He was a little nugget. He would be
Yeah.
so embarrassed. He's not gonna listen to this, so y'all don't tell him I called him a little nugget.
A little nugget. Oh, well. All right. I have one last question to ask you, but before I do, I'm going to open this up here. You guys down here in the audience, I'm sorry I haven't been paying attention. I don't know if anybody's talking down here, other than giving us some hearts and some loves and thumbs up. So I love that. Thank you very much. If you guys have questions, or comments or anything you'd like to add. I'd love to hear from you guys. Just press the plus sign, invite yourself up to speak. You're more than welcome to get up here on the stage and ask some questions. While I'm waiting for people to be brave and hopefully want to interact, because sometimes people are shy, just depends. But if you would, while we're waiting to see, I would love for you to get to maybe give us 2 to 3 key takeaways that you would like to send people home with, um, to encourage them and let them know that yes, they can find their laughter after, whether it's things that helped you or just words of encouragement.
Oh, yeah. Let's see here.
Putting you on the spot. I do this to
I
everybody.
know.
So,
The first one is probably my favorite phrase now, and I can't even take credit for it. I heard it from it was Tracy Ross Ellis. Heard her in an interview one time, and her favorite phrase she says to herself is gentle, gentle. And so we say that in every class I teach. If I hear someone talking negatively to themselves, if I and they have reflected it back to me, I said some they were like, mm-mm, gentle, gentle. And so
mm,
that connects to that idea of I think everyone's just really there's so much pain and heartache and tough stuff that we need to be gentle with ourselves and with others. So gentle, gentle, number one.
mm,
Number 2, I would say, do the next thing, and then I would add on to that, always with love.
I love it. I
So,
love it.
as you are overwhelmed, if you're in early stage grief, if you're dealing with traumas, everything can feel so big. There can
Mm,
be so many things you need to do at one time, and you can't. Don't try. Just do the next thing, whatever that next thing is. Um, Sometimes we would say it's get up off the floor. I'm like, yes, it is. So whatever that is, and then, at first it's just that next step, one foot in front of the other. And then, as you kind of grow, that's that first part of my grief to growth journal is just do the next thing. And then that second one is then you can start to be like, and always with love to put that in. And then the third thing is start looking for things that make your heart smile. So when you're up and you're moving again, what is it that's your light that shines? For me, it's doodling. For a lot of the people that I work with, you know, that is tapping in. How do we get started? I give you the skills to do that. But whatever it is, there is something in it. And sometimes that little pilot light's gone out. So do things that just, and your body will know because your body knows.
yeah, and
So
I love that. I,
mhm,
I love that you said that because I think that one of the things that we lose when we find ourselves in situations where we feel like we're not at home within ourselves is tuning in
mhm,
and listening.
mhm.
And that's why these things, like whether it's journaling, doodling, using something that's guided, or taking a blank piece of paper and saying, okay, this is one of the things and the techniques she taught. Let me just see what it looks like. So, one of the things that you talk about, even in this little journal here, I think you talked about 2 things. You talked about doodle ohm practice,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
it talks about begin with a dot and do a spiral, which
Mhm.
I'm really, really bad at not making the lines touch each other, like really, really bad. Like
Doesn't
really, really
matter
bad.
if they do or not. That's your intention. Just grab and release.
but but moving with that, this was the first one, and it was like it's wonky, it's real wonky. But you had that in there, and so it was doodling spirals, and then the other practice you said was put your pen on the paper and create a pattern, a short pattern, and then without lifting it, just recreate that pattern in different directions and just keep going all over the page. And I was like, oh, how am I supposed to remember what I did? But I did. And after a while, your brain just remember, and you could just go going. And then, like then it was like these interesting shapes and divisions in the way it went, and it turned into this, which was just I colored it in, right? So I
Yeah.
made the patterns and then I colored it in. So yeah, and honestly, this is something I have been doing every morning. Now, my uncle had a stroke recently, and so there's some days that got skipped. There's probably a whole week that got skipped in
Mhm.
here because I was at the hospital. But for the most part, this is like a thing, where normally I would get up in the morning and I'd write my gratitudes and I'd write, but I didn't doodle. Now I'm writing and I'm just taking the other side of the page and doodling. It's really fun. I'm loving it.
Let me tell you, it's just taps to a different part of your brain. It's just another little bit to slow down because the I'll tell you, Deanna, the debate we have, there's it's controversial. So let
Oh,
me give you a little bit here. And so it's and I don't know the answer. So, but there will be sometimes I'll work with a group and they're like, well, what if I don't want to do paper and pen or marker or thing? Can I just like tap on my app on my phone and do the coloring app?
mm,
And so I'm like, you know, I don't know. For me personally, would not work because that's my rabbit hole. And I would be, I would start there. I'd last maybe about a minute. And then, I'm on Pinterest. I'm like doing some other stuff. So for me, I have to have strong boundaries of no, it's going to be on this paper with, and most of the time it's three colors. I'm like, these three colors, these pens. And so I
I
have to
love
have
it.
those constraints. So,
Yeah, so I've done the coloring app and I can get lost in the coloring app, but it's more of I don't go out of it. I just wind up going one after another. What I like about what I like about doing it with the pen and paper is I get up in the morning and I do one page.
mhm.
I do my gratitude and I do one page because that's what I'm set out to do. It's not a rabbit hole. It isn't. It doesn't turn into a rabbit hole for me. I mean, it probably could, but it doesn't. The other thing that I like about it is okay. And I don't know. This might be me, and I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time because we're going a little bit over the hour. But I don't know about other people, but for me, going back to school and getting fresh school supplies was
Mm.
always like a thing. I love new notebooks, new pens, pencils. I have a thing for pens. They have to be really good pens. I love the gel pens. I can't stand black pens. Like I can take all the colors, but not black. I don't really love black. Um, but so that was a thing, and I think that, and we talked about this on a show not too long ago with Sonia. We were talking about transitions and phases. And one of the things is the seasons when they change. And for a good portion of your formative years, that season change into fall was going back to school. And even though you're not necessarily, and then your kids were bringing them to school, and it was all this little fresh new start and it was all new school supplies. And for me, like the season right now makes me want to do this. It makes me want to do this. This is always when I pick up, and I didn't notice that until after Sonia and I had our talk. I didn't notice it that it's kind of a fall thing. Like I'll pick up crocheting, and I'll take on that project, or I'll buy new coloring books or whatever. It always kind of tends to be around this time of year when everybody's like school shopping and and stuff. So
I
it's
think
fun.
there's like really a different energy because like tell people like June, July, August, I am outside, I'm kayaking, I'm hiking. I really enjoy that. But yeah, as we settle in now, last little teaser because we're doing the little tool guide to give to people. So your black pens, this one is my favorite. It's called a glaze pen. And when you write with it, the ink is so yummy. And then when it dries, I don't know if it'll shine. See that shine on it?
Oh yeah, I do see that. So is that drawn with that pen?
Uh huh. It dries and it's like a plastic
Uh
gloss.
huh.
And it is amazing. Let me show you this is my favorite page of it. But yeah, so these are my, like, I kind of like my mindfulness pens
Oh,
because,
okay.
so it's very opaque, glossy.
I
So
like it.
it
Wow.
it's
Okay.
a black pen. Now, gel pens, I
Is
got
that in your link right here? Is that
it
in there?
is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
Now, the other thing, if you like gel pens, do you like glittery ones?
Oh,
Let's
love glitter.
okay.
You
These
you talked about a fairy, and I'm like, I'm looking over here, and I got a pixie wand with pixie dust in it, which is just super fine glitter. I love
okay, you're
glitter.
gonna want these. These are the Pentel Sparkle Pop pens.
Ooh,
The
those sound
ink
yummy.
comes out of these and it is gorgeous. And they look different on black paper versus white paper. They have two colors
Oh,
of glitter in them. And so this page, see that shine, that red?
uh-huh. I get it. Yeah. I'm gonna open this up. Okay, yeah, I love that.
That is one of the sparkle pops. So it goes on so smoothly, it looks like it has been like printed onto the paper.
Yeah.
They're
It's very
stunning. So that's a little
bold.
teaser for like, yeah, once I got into it, all in over. Yeah. So
All
people are always
in.
like, oh,
All
do you
in.
know this pen? Do you know that pen? Because
Mhm.
I doodle a lot. And so, yeah, they're all in the guide. And that's why I put it together because people were like,
Yeah.
how does your stuff look that way? I was like, well, some of it is the pens that you use. So,
Yeah, and you do some watercolor stuff too with all that, so it's kinda like mixed media
yeah,
art, you know?
I do. So I've got different, and what I've been getting into lately is that idea of just using three colors. I know we're a little bit over, but
Yeah.
I
That's okay.
love this page was done with just three colors. It's a red, yellow, and blue marker. And so then when you let them mix together, you get all these beautiful other colors. So that's the
Oh,
kind of thing
okay.
that I like because it, as again,
So you can mix your marker colors.
yeah.
Okay.
So because I don't want people to get overwhelmed when they come to
Right.
me, a lot of times, like I said, if you're dealing with big stuff, and when you think of like,
Less choice is better.
yeah,
Yeah.
so these are my, like that page was done with these three markers.
Oh, I have those markers, yeah.
Yeah, so if you have like, so that's what you can do with three markers.
Okay.
So yeah, so
Hmm.
I like that kind of thing of like just the limited, so that when that idea of doing the next thing, if you don't have so many choices, then you're like, oh, I'm like, do the next thing. You're gonna color in red. Okay,
Yeah.
red, blue,
All
yellow.
right. I like it.
Yeah,
Well,
so that
I kind of made Sonia come up here because nobody was coming up, and I always like to put her on the spot. But Sonia, I feel like all of this stuff is probably like in your mind because she does artwork and art therapy as well, or in the social work arena. And I know she's done this with classes too. And I just wanted to hear some input. What do you have to say about all of this?
Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm just eating this up alive. First of all, Roxanne, I just, my heart is so full in just listening to you speak and how you've overcome. I don't want to say overcome because I don't think we ever truly overcome grief, but just listening to your journey through the trauma of the death that you've been experiencing. And then I hope you really understand and know what an amazing woman you really are and how courageous and brave you've been. Just to be able to jump into a workshop, right after the passing. Um, for anybody who's not attended a workshop, when it comes to healing, they are incredibly emotional for every participant and stuff. You can just feel such compassion with what's going on. And so I'm just thrilled to have been introduced to you. So, Deanna, once again, I'm grateful for you and everything, of course, that you do, and bringing Roxanne onto the show. And it just really helps to reinforce how important it is for people to understand that everybody is born creative. And I know, like, the first half hour, 45 minutes in my workshops, it's talking about that and just simply getting people over that fear of making their very first mark on a blank white page. And once you get past that, it's just a lot of fun. So I just really thank you, and I'm for sure going to be looking at your work and your journals. I know right now I've got a couple clients who certainly could use them. So I want to get that information to them. And that's really all I have to say. It just, like I said, you have filled my heart with so much joy and love. And again, Deanna, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sonia, because I just know that Sonia does some work in this arena too, and even individual with clients, so she coaches, but even individually with clients, when you have this in your pocket, it's something that you can add to. Now, Sonia is good at this, already as far as guiding people through their emotions with art and just getting to put something on a piece of paper. But I have personally, I love being able to, and this is something she said too, is being able to add tools to our toolbox
Mhm.
when we're coaching. So while I'm not a professional doodler, I am not Super Doodle Girl, and I am not Sonia. I can say, hey, I have a stack of these, and I think this particular one would be really beneficial for you. Let me show you how I've used it and allow them to explore. Because I do think that even as a coach, I don't have to know all of these techniques to allow them to have the resources and allow them to explore them. And then having a resource that says, hey, if you want to take the course or you want her tools, tap into it because, it all adds value to what they're going through or what we're processing. And I agree with Sonia too in the fact that in that healing process, it is if you've ever been to a workshop. So in my healing process, the first thing I did was go to, well, it wasn't the first thing, but when I was ready to actually address, the fact that I needed to do something. And two of my best friends took me to a workshop experience. And it was a 2-day event. It wasn't a retreat, but it was a 2-day experience. And we made it a retreat because the way we did it, but it was just us in our room and how we did it. But man, just like it is like she said, it's very transformative when you have a room full of people who are on the same journey. You don't have to have the same issues. You don't have to be overcoming the same things, but you are on a similar journey because you're all there for similar reasons. And that is knowing that you need to make a change, you need to pour into yourself, you need to figure out a way or an outlet that allows you to get back to yourself or to tap into that place that allows you, like you said, to get unstuck. And I
Mhm.
encourage anybody, if you've never experienced something like that, like reach out. Obviously, Roxanne she does this for different retreats, so I'm sure she knows where some of those are. I'm doing a retreat in January with another coach friend of mine. We have the experience that I was talking about is a 2-day kind of conference workshop experience, but it's all personal development. It's all looking inward. It's all talking about the next right step. It's all about those small steps that you take every day instead of worrying about tackling the whole thing. Let's just little pieces at a time will become the whole thing. And it really becomes very introspective. It's very individualistic. And so when I went to that, I have not missed one since then. So I've been going since 2015. And it is the same. I feel like I won't miss it because we're all healing differently, but we're all doing that together in this place. And so that energy from that, it really is incredible. And I mean, I was a blubbering mess that first one. I was like, I don't know how anybody is even sitting around us right now. Okay. But you do. You walk away with a lot of friends afterwards because you realize you're not on this journey alone. And that's one of the things I think I like to bring to this show is to let people know you're not alone. to just keep going. There is laughter after, we promise. There is. Tap into any and every of the things that you've heard here, because I feel like as I bring guests onto the show, I want people to know that you don't have to do it my way. Yeah, I'm a coach. If you need help, by all means call me, but you don't have to do it my way. Everybody I bring onto the show has something to offer. And by all means, whatever resonates, tap into that. Because really, at the end of the day, it's all about us as a collective coming together as human beings and recognizing that we are, yeah, we're all unique, but we're more alike than we aren't. We want the same things, peace and calm and prosperity, and to love each other and to have the thing, that's the kind of stuff that we all just kind of want. It might look different, but way down at the root of it, right? And so I think that if we have resources, and so people can know that we have these resources, and I love that. So, yeah, I want to just say I appreciate you coming today. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
The last thing, normally I do this disclaimer at the beginning, but I do
Okay.
want to make sure that everyone knows, because as you were talking about the toolkit, I did not only use doodling. Okay, so I want to make sure like just doodling is not enough. So I used the full range. So the grief care, the doodling, the creativity, the therapist, the medication. I used all the things. So I do want to be very clear on that, because sometimes I'm like, you
Right.
think I'm going to just grab a Sharpie and a
Um,
pad and that's going to, no. That's just
Come on now. The title is Doodle Your Way Free. Come on. Come on.
just one
Uh,
little tool in the kit. So, yes.
and that's the reason. Okay, and again, sharing this because look, you already told us that you were in the group and that you went to the Lucky Star camp, and that so it's never just one thing. And you may try some things that aren't for you, but you have to just keep tapping into those things till you find the thing that works.
Mhm. Yes.
And I think that for me, doing a show like this lets people know there's lots to pick from,
Mhm.
right? There are a lot of options out there. So don't narrow that. Keep your mind and your heart open to it. And then, try them out. And you
Yeah,
never know. You never know.
100%.
One of these things you're going to tap into and you're going to be, this is my thing. Right here. I think I'm one of those people who I think all the things are my thing. So whatever. So
Mm.
all right. Well, I appreciate the disclaimer. Sonia, thank you for jumping up. I know you always game, even if you don't raise your hand. I just put her on the spot and say, come on, talk to me. So I appreciate you jumping up here on the stage and sharing with us, Sonia. And I like to tell my guests this. I see you and you are beautiful. And that is 100% true. I think that everyone here can agree with me on that. And, just keep shining your light. I appreciate the work that you're doing. So thanks for coming on the show.
All right. I appreciate your time and the invitation, and to be able to share with others, because you're exactly right. It's not one size fits all.
There you go. All right. So with that, I'm going to pull you off of camera. I'm going to pull me off of camera, and I'm going to play some music to let us get undone here, because it takes a minute to undo it. But yeah, again, thanks a lot. Okay.
All righty.
All right. Till next time, you guys. I'll see you next week. You'll shine on. And I got to figure out how to do it because it's never easy. All right. There we go.
Like your lazy eye, your love makes me smile. There I be inside, scary.
All right, guys.
I'm your
Music by Dan Freeman.